and welcome to The Black Unconscious,
a mental health podcast about living, coping, and thriving while Black.
I'm Raquel Martin, a PhD candidate in medical and clinical psychology.
And I'm Dr. Justin Hopkins, a licensed clinical psychologist.
This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a therapeutic relationship with a licensed therapist.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey, and welcome to The Black Unconscious. We are your hosts. I am Dr. Justin Hopkins.
And I'm Raquel Martin.
And today, we are continuing our series on relationships. This is episode 18. Is that right? Episode 18?
Yeah, this is 18.
What's Love Got to Do with It? Part 3.
The final part. For romantic relationships, at least.
The final installment. That's right. And then we'll transition in our next episode to talking more so about friendships. But today, intimate partner relationships. We're continuing. I think the last thing we left off on, Raquel, was talking about love languages.
Yeah, I think we said we were going to start off with this week to transition because I don't really think we could give it enough time last episode because there's a lot that goes into it.
That's right. And last week, as you all know, we released our episode. It was both video and audio of our presentation at DC Pod Fest. That was a lot of fun. Diversity panel entitled "Not All Podcasters Are White."
Yeah, it was interesting though because most of the white people walked out before we started, and I kind of think they could have stayed and listened to that part. It was just very interesting.
Right.
It was minorities, and we already know the drill. I think most of the time, so It was a great festival, but I couldn't help but notice that.
Right. It is interesting to see how folks self-select out or self-select in for those kind of conversations, But in any event, it was a really good event for us. I think we just had some good fun networking and getting to know other podcasters. So I would say mission success overall. Yeah,
and I think it was put together really, really well. I really feel like there was something for everyone. There were 3 events going on at each time. They provided you with food. There were a bunch of different topics from monetizing to doing elevator podcast pitches to talking about self-care and stuff during the podcast experience. It was a really good event. I think it's definitely going to be one that sticks around for a while. I think this was the 3rd or the 4th one, so they'll probably doing one every single year because it did such a good job.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they continue to grow and maybe we'll come back again in the future. So let's get into our conversation for today. So I think you're right. We wanted to talk about love languages last time, but couldn't in the interest of time. So let's do that right now. So essentially, there are these couples therapists and relationship theorists that talk about how love is communicated in different ways. This is a very, very popular concept, basically saying that everyone has a preferred way to receive love, right? And there are 5 broad topics. I wouldn't say they're all inclusive. They may or may not be, depending on who you are, but I think they do a pretty good job of encapsulating most of the ways in which people communicate and receive affection.
Yeah, so the love languages were developed by Gary Chapman. It was published in 1995, and it's probably one of the most translated books out there, and it's just entitled "The 5 Love Languages: How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate." So There are different love languages, but the whole point of it, the whole aspect is to understand how to express commitment to your mate and understand how they like to express commitment towards you. So knowing what your love language is only half the battle. When it comes down to it, it really also goes into understanding what your mate's love language is and understanding how to help them grasp the concept of how you like to receive love.
Absolutely. So they are, in no particular order of importance or any other order, really. They are words of affirmation, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, and acts of service. So words of affirmation, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, and acts of service. Now, depending on who you are, and we've talked about this in the other episodes of just how early experiences shape a lot of our preferences and style of communicating in adult relationships. So our love languages in many ways are learned based off of those experiences. But as Raquel, as you were saying, right, depending on your love language, Well, first, we tend to both communicate love in the same way that we actually want love to be communicated to us. For example, like if my love language is quality of time, right? If my love language is quality time, I'm going to try to express and trying to make quality time moments happen between my partner and I, because that's what I want. And also that's my way of communicating love to the other person. But the challenge is that, of course, like not everyone has the same love language. So although you are communicating love through this avenue of quality time, it may not be registering to the same degree that you imagine it would for your partner, because that may not be their love language.
Yeah. So there's also like a million quizzes online to like identify what your love language is and things like that. I don't think that any list or any quiz or anything can be all inclusive of everything. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's helpful. Have you ever looked up like or read the book or thought about like what your individual love languages are?
I've read the book. I haven't done any of the quizzes though.
I don't think the quizzes were in the book. I think the quizzes were like Google quizzes.
Right.
On the same vein as like what, character are you or something like that. Like they're not really. I don't think Gary Chapman had anything to do with them.
Right.
Yeah. So what would you say your love language is?
So for me,
or are, I think there's always like a primary and a secondary. So I think the book goes according to like there's two.
Yeah, I would say quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch are like top 3. My number 1, I'm not sure on. I have a hard time picking.
I would say that like, and this could be a bad assumption, but I would think like most men are physical touch just because of sex.
I also do have a theory about that, of why that is. Like, I think...
Is it because of sex or is it because of...
Well, yes and no. I think for a lot of men, they don't get enough physical touch as when they're young because of the confines of masculinity and all of its robust and at times toxic nature. And so we often grow up desiring more physical touch, and it's supplemented through other like male, more acceptable male ideas such as sex and attracting women or other partners. Like, so I don't know, like maybe there's something to that, maybe not. But yeah, I think physical touch is a big one for a lot of men. But one thing I just really like to reemphasize with this is just how like it's really important to learn your partner's love language, because you can think that you're communicating love to your partner, and really you may not be communicating as much love as you think, because they may not interpret it to the same degree as you, because again, they have a different love language. So there's this concept called the love bank, which I've used in couples therapy at times, which basically brings love into the accounting realm, essentially. So for example, when you get paid and you make a deposit into your bank, your bank fills up. Obviously, you see that number go up, the total net funds that you have in your account. And when you need to make a subtraction, right, depending on the amount that you have in that bank, that subtraction is going to hurt more or less. So couples disagree and fight and argue from time to time. It's just a natural part of being in relationship with someone who is not you.
Yeah, I think it's also the fact that like it could be hard for some people to express themselves in the love language that their mate has, like words of affirmation. Some people aren't very verbal, so it can be very difficult for them to express themselves in that way. Or anything that has to do with affection. Some people just aren't as affectionate. So just because you're unable to or find difficulty with expressing yourself in that love language doesn't mean you don't care about the person. It just means you may have to put forth the effort, which I think is always like the most important factor in a relationship, like effort, because you can do something wrong and then all this other stuff, but if you don't want to fix it, then there's like really no point.
Right.
But I think it can be hard for a lot of people to, I think the words of affirmation is hard because words are harder in my opinion for most people. So it can be hard for someone to express that versus physical touch can be easier for people. Receiving gifts can be easier for people. Like receiving gifts would like legit never be on my list because that's just I mean, it takes nothing to buy. I mean, it takes money, but that really doesn't. Like, that wouldn't even be anywhere near my list. So, and for someone else, receiving gifts can be how they were brought up to understand someone cares about you. So if the person doesn't buy them things, and they just feel like they don't care about them.
Yeah. Well, when you have those moments when things are mismatched and your preferences don't align, again, you can have what I would call these withdrawals from your love bank, essentially. So
yeah, the term love bank sounds mad corny. I'm not gonna lie, but okay. Yeah.
I think it actually comes. It's not. I don't know if Gary Chapman talks about this. So it's not my term. It's either Gary Chapman or Everett Worthington. I think he is the founder of the Hope Focused Couples Therapy approach, and he talks about the love bank as well. So it's basically just a metaphor for deposits and withdrawals in a relationship. And if you're speaking the love language of your partner, your deposit is going to be worth more. And then you all will be able to withstand more of those withdrawals when you're not aligned. Or so you may think, you're giving a lot of effort trying to love your partner, but it's important that you're loving your partner in the way that they would like to be loved. So those deposits that you make, you actually get more bang for your buck, and you can withstand some of the moments when you all disagree with one another.
Yeah, and we also posted something on our Instagram about like the different ways that some people like can communicate, or like actions to take, or things to avoid when it comes to speaking your partner's love languages. Like physical touch was like hugs and kisses and cuddling. I think it's also important to know like what's the extent to each one, because some people can be like, physical touch, oh yeah, we just had sex yesterday, and it's like, yeah, I just want to hold your hand though, like I don't really need that aspect. Or like receiving gifts, it can be off-putting to some people. Like, I'm not going to buy you something every 5 seconds. Some people, that can be a candy bar, or it could just be like something that you thought about with them. Quality time. You can say, oh, I don't have all the time in the world to spend because I have work, and the person's just like, oh, I'd be cool with just 30 minutes at the end of the day. I also think with quality time, it's important to think about how active you're being with the quality time, or how engaged, basically, because all of us have phones and all of us have computers and stuff like that. And you may think that spending like 30 minutes with someone at the end of the day is good, but your mate can see like if you're on your phone the whole entire time, then it doesn't really count because you're not really being fully engaged. I think there's always like ranges that come with every single aspect. Like acts of service can be something as simple as taking out the trash or doing the dishes for someone, or even just, I don't know. I can't think of any acts of service. All I want is like chores done in the house. That's all I got.
But I think those are good examples, right? Yeah. Like those simple ways in which you do something for your partner to take care of them or the relationship as a whole, or the space that you, the space that you live in. So these are basically love languages in a nutshell. I mean, words of affirmation, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, acts of service. You get the most bang for your buck by speaking the language that your partner speaks, and your partner speaking the language that you speak, so that you can deposit more into each other's love lives and decrease the number of withdrawals, or be able to better withstand the times when you do argue and do have disagreements. Akin to this, I would say, is a really important statistic that I'd be remiss if I did not share, and that's from our guy Gottman. Gottman does a lot of work with couples. That's a good question. I don't remember his first name. I'm going to have to look it up. But Gottman he's done a ton of research with couples in terms of what constitutes a satisfactory relationship. John Gottman is his name. What a first name to forget. John Gottman. And he's one of the leading researchers when it comes to couples therapy and having a healthy marriage and a satisfactory marriage. And so he's done things to predict satisfactory marriage, to predict divorce. He's looked at what are the number one qualities that help sustain marriage. And so one thing that I'll share, and this ratio is well known amongst people who do kind of couples therapy, but not necessarily as well known to the public. And that's what we would call the magic 5-to-1 ratio. What Gottman has found over his years of research is that the number one predictor of divorce is that couples will not have a 5-to-1 positive to negative interaction. that means for every 5 positive interactions you have, it equals to about 1 negative in the course of a relationship. So going back to that love bank analogy, like 5 deposits equals about 1 withdrawal. And so successful couples that are happy, satisfactory couples, have this ratio. They have a better, at 5-to-1 or better ratio of positive to negative interactions. And he was actually able to predict divorce for couples who didn't meet that standard. And so that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind between you and your partner, that you want to do everything that you can to make sure that there are more deposits into the relationship than there are withdrawals, and that you all are having some positive engagement more frequently than less.
Yeah, and I think with other relationships, even if you're not married, it might be good to compare this to like days out the week too. If you're having a bunch of bad days with your with your mate, like a bunch of bad days in a row, and you're noticing like 6, 7, 8 days go by, they've all been terrible, and then you have like one good moment of a day, it's not really adding up. Like, why would you want to be stuck with someone that you're not enjoying? Life is so short. And I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't hold on to mistakes just because you spent so long making them. So yeah, you may be with this person for years, and yeah, you may have like, I don't know, gotten a puppy together or something like that. But like, if you're not happy, you're not happy. Life is too short to spend it unhappy.
Right. And if you can't find ways to work on it, right? Like if couples therapy is not an option, if communicating about these things are not an option, or the relationship is kind of disintegrated into that level of operating, then that's concerning. Right?
Or if you don't want to work on it.
Right.
Like if you just like, I'm over this. Like the reason why you're not putting forth effort and the reason why you're not putting forth a fight anymore is because you genuinely just don't want to work on it anymore. Like leave. There's nothing wrong with just being like, I don't want to be in this anymore. You don't have to explain yourself for not wanting to be in this anymore. You can let the person know. I don't know how much I really believe in like closure at the end of relationships, because a lot of times I've heard individuals talk about like wanting to meet up with someone to get closure, and then somehow they both ended up naked. So I just think maybe closure may take more time. You may not be something that you get at the end of the relationship, like directly after. But I think sometimes people use the whole closure conversation that they want to have like as a way just to see the person one last time. And I'm not a couples therapist, but I don't know. I feel like you can just... We have all these amazing functions on our phone where we can just block someone at the drop of a hat. So I'm more of a like block a person and walk away.
So
vicious when it comes down to that.
So if there's not a 5-to-1 ratio in your relationships, Raquel, it's time for the guillotine.
Yeah, because also like so many people are like busy. Like I'm really busy. All my friends are really busy. Like it takes nothing to be a bad friend or a bad like boyfriend or a bad girlfriend, but it takes way more effort to be a good one. So I'm putting forth all this time and energy into you between like my work and my dissertation and my teaching and my like trying to maintain my relationship with my husband and my trying to maintain my relationship with myself. And then I'm not getting anything back. Like I'm not wasting my time on you. Like I have so little time in the first place. And I feel like we should think of our time as commodities. Don't just give it out to people. Like, if the person hasn't earned it and they're not appreciating it, take it back and stop talking to them. And I just feel that way anyway, just because I just don't like wasting my time because I have so little of it.
So we've talked a lot about positive relationships, how to maintain them, how to keep them. But we do want to transition into understanding toxic relationships, when to call it quits, and when it's becoming more and more clear that things are not going to work out or unhealthy for you for one reason or another. Before we do, I just want to say really, really quick, like going back to that 5-to-1 ratio, depositing certain things into your relationship. One of the things that we often do during couples therapy is have date night. And it sounds kind of cheesy, kind of lame and whack. Like, of course, like everyone has like date night, but it's really just to reemphasize the idea that it really is important for you to intentionally make deposits into your relationship via spending time together. And so date night doesn't have to be anything crazy or wild, but you schedule other things in your life. You make time for other things in your life. You do have to make time for your relationship and communicating love to your partner.
Yeah, and I don't think date night has to be too intense. Like during the summer when I had more time, my husband and I were doing date nights like rock climbing and archery and stuff when I have more time. But now that I have internship, the date night like Fridays we normally get pizza and figure out what we're gonna watch on Netflix or something. Like it's not really going out all the time. It can just be something simple. Like I'm sure when our schedule permits, we'll be able to do more stuff. But as for right now, like barely making it. So our date night is really just like, get the cover and somebody figure out like what crap movie is on Netflix. And honestly, lately it's just been like seeing, like the goal has been to see what is the crappiest movie we can find, which is really easy to do on Netflix or Amazon. But yeah, last night we watched a movie about Chance the Rapper being a werewolf.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It was absurd.
That's an actual movie?
Yeah, it's an actual movie. It was crazy. It's about werewolves, ghosts, what else? And witches. And Chance the Rapper was the werewolf.
What is it called? That is
Slice or something. Wait. Because I do not think it was that bad. Because I've seen a lot of really bad movies.
Is he in the movie?
He's in the movie. He's a main character.
Wow.
It's called Slice. Yeah, it's called Slice. It came out this year.
So just kind of bad.
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
But it wasn't too bad? Like kind of bad?
I really don't think it was that bad.
Are you recommending it?
No, I am not recommending it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I would recommend it because sometimes it's good to see like a bad movie.
Okay, but you recommend it as like a bad movie.
Yeah, Zazie Beetz is in it, which like I like am enamored with her. I think she's gorgeous, so that's just me. But Zazie Beetz is I don't know what most people know her from, but she's on Atlanta.
Is she?
She's the teacher. She's dating
Yes, Earl.
Yeah.
Ernest.
Yeah, she's dating Ern. So,
Childish Gambino, Donald Glover's character.
Yeah, but she's in a million things, so I think a lot of people know her from
Yes.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, so
watch some crap TV.
Should we transition to toxic relationships?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are some of the hallmarks?
Controlling is like one of the biggest ones in my opinion. But a lot of people have their own range when it comes to the level of control. Like, I think in my relationship, we're both very independent. So the aspect of control, someone may want more control in their relationship and that may work for them. That just was never going to work for me. And plus I have a huge personality, so it really would have just been a struggle. So I think it depends on what you're controlling. Like I found that some people, when it comes to control, you're not willing to let go of control because you're not trusting of the person, but there's always a fine line with that. It's like if they're trying to control where you go, who you're doing it with, why you're doing it, looking through your phone 24/7, like that's just uncomfortable versus allowing someone to have control in the relationship to, like, I don't know, pick dinner or take care of something. Like, and I feel like it's not, I actually don't think it's a fine line. I think I think it's pretty obvious when someone's being very controlling, like when you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or you're making excuses for them.
Well, I think one of the things that couples often fight about is money. Like, money is top 3 among things that, I don't remember what the other 2 are, but money is definitely top 3.
I thought it was money, sex, and time.
That doesn't sound far off. I don't know what the other 2 are for sure. But that doesn't sound that doesn't sound wrong to me. And
with like abusive relationships, financial abuse is something. So that's controlling a certain aspect when you are handling all the aspects of the money when it comes to saving, bank accounts, rent, like nothing is in your name and stuff like that. Like it's a really big way to isolate individuals from the other person, like from their families. Like it's like if your question is, well, I mean, I can't leave this person, I can't leave her, or I can't leave him because I have nowhere else to go, I have no money, they have access to all the accounts, they're the primary account holder. That can be that's a form of control and financial abuse too. Yeah, absolutely. I do think in general, like, money is often communicates dynamics of power and control. Almost always, especially in relationships. And you're kind of getting into like the like emotional abuse, right? Because controlling can be an emotionally abusive thing. And I think one of the telltale signs that's often overlooked about whether a relationship is emotionally abusive is if you worry about being able to present certain needs to your partner. Like, if you cannot ask certain things because you are too scared, right? If you're like way too scared to like be able to
even ask like, hey, hon, can you pick up food for us? Or hey, do you mind not leaving your hair in the sink? Like just asking like little things like that. If you aren't able to present some of like your concerns because you're like worried that it will destroy the relationship, like that is a sign of, to me, like that's like the makings of a trauma kind of response, or there could be trauma attached to it, where it's a fear base in the relationship in terms of presenting your needs. Because
that's not what I think any relationship should be built off of. It should be supportive. Like as minorities, we have enough to fear in the world, period, when it comes to systemic racism, when it comes to, I don't know, everything that we have to deal with. And the last place that I want to be fearful is with the person who I'm supposed to feel at most home with. Mm-hmm. So any aspect of fear is like just a red flag, like discomfort. Because like the abuse can be physical, emotional, financial, but it's no one, doesn't have to be someone hitting you for you to feel attacked. Mm-hmm. Like if someone's constantly insulting you or making you feel less than, that's abusive.
Right. It kind of goes back to the thing that you were saying about fear, right? Like if you're living with a sense of fear in your relationship and you can't express yourself or come to the table with your partner about certain things because you're worried about there being massive invalidations or really bad arguments or the relationship just breaking down and deteriorating, then that's cause for concern. I think another hallmark for toxic relationships is reciprocity. When there is an imbalance of reciprocity, when there isn't mutual effort, you see this a lot when people are dating, right? And they're still trying to figure out whether they want to be a couple or what are they doing? Like what space are you in? These kind of gray spaces in relationships. Especially there can be like one person who's really pursuing a committed relationship and the other person who's kind of on the fence or not really on board. And granted, right, like that hesitation, there's a time and a place for that, right? When you're still getting to know someone, okay, cool, fine. When people are still learning about each other, still trying to figure out how much effort or commitment they should make towards the other person. When things are early, when the relationship is nascent, it can, of course, there's going to be some gray space in trying to navigate feelings of commitment and whether there's a shared affinity. When there's been time, when you all have dated for several months or years and there's still this kind of gray space, I'm
sorry, years is not no. I think seriously, years would be absurd. Like, I think you should say months. Well, no, I can't tell you what to say.
There's some people that date for a year and a half.
And there's gray space.
And they haven't decided how monogamous they are or whether they're polyamorous or like what the case is. Like whether it's an open relationship, whether it's not, and it happens.
I think that's more of a youth thing. I don't, okay. Like I still think we're young because I'm 29. So I still consider myself mad young when it comes to like knowing stuff and all that. But at 29, no, that's a no for me. Years, that's absurd.
People do
like
it.
We're not friends. What I always say, like we don't need male and female friends. We're not building a clubhouse together. We're not doing that for like a year. Girl, sir, leave. Because like the only reason why, this is awful. I'm also not the relationship therapist in the room right now. Justin is. So I just get to speak as a person. The only reason why it's taking years is because he or she cannot decide if you are worth them letting go of the other people they are boning or like talking to. Don't do it. It doesn't take that long.
Well, I think
it doesn't. I don't think it takes that long for anyone. I knew that my husband's the person I wanted to marry maybe a year in, but that's like no. And we were already in a relationship because I don't play those games. So no, leave.
Right.
Anyone listening to this is like, oh, well, maybe we're in the gray space. You're not. He's not in he's not in the gray space with the other person he's dating. And she is not in the gray space with the other person she's dating. I'm just saying. Just speaking in generalizations that are probably going to be proven wrong.
I think there's a lot of validity to what you're saying.
That's ridiculous.
And yeah,
oh my God. I wish
you may not be a couples therapist, but you
I'm
both
not. I have
a
no
grown
interest.
woman and a soon-to-be psychologist. So I think you have some validity here.
Yeah,
I'll also
too old
say
for this, man.
I'll also say that leads exactly to what I wanted to highlight, and it's the principle when it comes to relationships. At a certain point in relationship, the principle of fuck yes or fuck no. When you are trying to decide whether to be in relationship with someone, the lukewarm, hesitant, maybe, okay, the caveats, it really is, and I'm seldom this absolute. And so obviously I don't think this is going to apply to every single situation, but when it comes to like deciding whether you want to commit to somebody or not, it's either really a fuck yes or a fuck no. And if there's like a maybe or an in between or a kind of, or I'll say yes, but I have these reservations, those reservations will come out some way. The resentment, the frustration, it will come out some way if you agree and you don't really want to, or if you go along with something that you don't actually desire. So it really is either saying yes emphatically and with passion and decisiveness, or it's a no.
Yeah, and then you're wasting their time, that just sounded mad country. You just wasted their time because you could have let that amazing woman or that amazing man find somebody else. If I'm not for you, that is okay. Like, this is not going to hurt my feelings. What is going to hurt my feelings is you finding out that I wasn't for you years in. And it just takes longer to rebuild after that. I'm not saying you can't, because you can always rebuild after something, but you're just wasting their time. And there's no way to get time back. There is no more precious commodity than time. You will never get it back, ever. So don't waste my time. That's why, like, if you waste my time, like, you have every right to be upset, because you're never going to get it back. There's nothing more precious. Time is more precious than money. People don't go back saying, I wish I had more money. It's like, I wish I had more time with my family. I wish I could have spent more time with this person. Not, I wish I could have bought another Bentley. Like, time is never something that you can get back. So if someone doesn't respect your time, then they don't respect you. And that goes for family, friends, romantic, all that.
Yeah. I think one of the other ways in which we see relationships not being so reciprocal is when there is one person who is way more emotionally in tuned or way more mature in understanding themselves than the other person. And then you are kind of just supporting them as they grow and catch up to where you are. And not just emotionally, but also whether that be financially, professionally, in terms of how in terms of relationships, like if that person doesn't have another friend outside of the relationship and all there is you, and so you have to also be present for them to because they don't have anyone else. Like when there's that lack of reciprocity between a level of independence and self-growth from the other person, that can bring about a lot of frustration and resentment, because there are sacrifices that have to be made in order for the other person to grow and develop to the place where you are.
And that reminds me of this video that's going around a lot with Pastor John Gray, where he talks about how he and his wife were not on even footing when they first got married. I'm going to read the whole quote because it's a doozy. So he says, I married a woman 2 sizes too big. I have to grow into Aventer. Aventer is his wife's name. She's a coat. I still can't fit her. She's bigger than me, and she's had to cover me while I grow up. I got to grow into her. She's a covering, not a lid, because if a man marries a lid, she'll stop your dream. But if you marry a covering, she'll push you to your destiny. Let me tell you something. My wife has endured more pain birthing me than both of our children. She has sacrificed these last 8 years, uncovering the painful areas of my manhood and covering the areas that could have exposed me. So, I mean, this is basically, this connects to what you were saying about being with someone who wasn't on even footing when you got married. Like, he's saying he had to grow into a bigger person to be how she was as a woman. And I think the issue that so many people have about this is because it puts so much on the woman, to develop a person, And I don't ever think that's my job unless it's my child. Like when I was looking for someone to be with, I wasn't looking for someone to complete me because I'm already a whole person. I was looking for someone to compliment me. And I feel like my husband compliments me in like almost every way. And I also feel like finding someone to complete you is just such a dangerous aspect, because what if something happens to that person? And just identifying that you're not a whole person, and just also identifying the fact that it's up to the woman to birth you. Like there's so much wrong with that statement. And I feel like it always comes down on women to do so much more. And this is why there's so many difficulties with women finding someone, because it just comes down to not only do I have to build a relationship with you, but it's also my responsibility to build you into a person. Like it's not just the fact that we have to work on each other. I also have to work on you. It's also the issue that like it should never be anyone's responsibility to build anyone but your child. And that I just don't think that's my job. And I don't think any woman should feel like you should hold like ride or die with some person until the end because they may become who you want them to be. Like that's just too much responsibility. And also like, why would you want that responsibility on yourself for a man? It's not your job to build a man. Like no man wants someone to be with them who thinks that they're their mother. Like right? Like you already have a mom.
Right.
You don't want another mom.
Well, I think this pastor is speaking from very traditional Christian,
narcissistic and misogynistic,
heteronormative gender roles and expectations, right? I think the thing that really, really frustrates me the most about this is that he is highlighting the merit and value of his wife by the amount of pain she can withstand by being with him.
It's just so dangerous.
Like when he says, let me tell you something, my wife has endured more pain birthing me than both of our children. He is, and he goes on to talk about her sacrifice. He is in some ways placing a lot of value on just her ability to withstand the things that he did not have within him. And it speaks to this idea that this heteronormative and misogynistic expectation, as you said, Raquel, that...
And narcissistic. This is a little narcissistic as well.
It is.
Like, this is narcissistic. Like,
well, misogyny is narcissistic.
Yeah,
right. Like misogyny is narcissistic, and so is patriarchy and chauvinism, right? Like it kind of speaks to this this like heteronormative expectation that women are to be there for the man, and to be able to grow him and groom him solely, and. Some people do aspire to those and like believe in those. I think I personally, and Raquel, it sounds like you as well, like just also believe that there should be more of a mutual growing experience.
Yeah, because we're all going to grow in relationships. So I've grown in my relationship. We've both grown. And I think we both shaped each other. Like, it's not just me shaping my husband. He's definitely shaped like the way I react to things and the way like I think about things, because that's the whole point, right? Like to have someone who challenges your way of being so that you can grow into the best possible version of yourself. But we've done that for each other. I don't think that, it's like the reciprocal thing you mentioned. We've done that for each other. Mm-hmm. So like we've both grown, and right. It clearly, now mind you, he said that he's happily married.
Right.
So this also goes into the point is like what works for you. But I don't think anybody wants to marry their mama, and nobody wants to be told what to do half the time, and no woman should have to endure pain. And just to get like, this is actually one of the main things problems I have with most Tyler Perry films. Like the most recent one that came out, Acrimony, that like there were all these women taking care of this man, like first his wife, then his girlfriend that he decided to marry after his wife. And the thing that I got from the movie is that like you got to stay with this man as long as possible, endure him, because if not, as soon as you walk away, he's going to become a millionaire. Because that's what happened in the movie. Like she was with him for years. He took she allowed him, because it wasn't just him. She allowed him to like use all of the savings and stuff like that. And as soon as she broke up with him, he became a millionaire. And he became a millionaire because another woman helped him do it. So like this whole ride or die, no, I'm not doing that. Take care of yourself as well. And it's just very dangerous. It's like when Ariana Grande when Mac Miller passed away, there were a lot of people saying like, oh, I wonder if this is because Ariana Grande walked away from him and didn't want to be with him through his drug addiction. Why is that her requirement to stay with him through that?
Right.
We don't know the intricacies of her relationship, and it's not for her to take care of him. Because as much as you state that you don't want a nag and you don't want a controlling woman, you don't want a nag or controlling man, like where's the line?
Right.
Like that's not my job, and I don't want to ever come home and feel like I have the responsibility to not only do I have to feed my child, but I also have to not even feed my child, because there's nothing wrong with cooking for your spouse. But not only do I have to like grow my child into like a positive human being, I got to make sure my husband has thought about others that day. Like that's just so stupid.
Yeah, we've talked about the issue of undeveloped emotionality among men, and in particular men of color, on this show before. And it does enter into relationships and cause this imbalance where there is a lack of reciprocity and understanding oneself and the other person, being in tune with what you need and what the other person needs, being able to be autonomous, yet also lean into depending on the other person when you need to. That level of flexibility takes a lot of health, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of patience, a lot of learning yourself and figuring out where you are good and where you need assistance, where you are great and you have strengths, and where you have flaws, and your partner may respond to those flaws. And I think for men, as we've talked about, we do not take the opportunities to do that, or have the opportunities to do that so many times when we're young. And you see it play out with relationships being not so reciprocal in that realm when they find partners at times. So
yeah.
that can be a sign of a relationship that isn't going so well.
Yeah, or it can be a sign of one that is going well, because they seem to be going strong. It's also different because Michelle Obama actually just had an interview. She's doing a lot of interviews for her book. And she said one of the things that appealed to her about Barack Obama was that he was a fully formed male already. Like, so it may work for you. It may not. I mean, it wouldn't work for me. Because that's just like, I work with people all day and like having to develop people. And I just don't think it's my job to birth you. Right. And it's also insulting. I don't know why anyone would feel comfortable stating that my wife birthed me. I would be insulted by that. Like if
well, it does sound like he's giving her a lot of, like, that's the compliment, right? Like that's the compliment, that you withstood all of the worst, undeveloped, immature parts of me, and that's what makes you a great wife.
And that shouldn't even be a compliment. You should be a great wife because you support me, because you have character, because you're honest, because you're truthful, because you make me laugh when I want to snap, because you provide me with balance, because you're just an amazing person, not because of what you could do for me. Every single thing about what he identified for her being a good wife is what he did for her, not who she is as a person.
Well, and then the husband or other wife or whoever they are, like they also need to the same things would make them a good partner to the other person. Yeah. And like you said, like, right, like different strokes, different folks. Like Mike Pence and his wife are still going strong. This pastor and his wife by his account seem just fine. So you never know, right? Like people, what is important, right? We're giving these like hallmarks from that are also like kind of our personal understanding.
They're not exhaustive at all.
But there is something like templated in general as well for couples out there.
Certain things will never be okay. Abuse will never be okay.
Right. Like having someone who's overly controlling and always negative, someone constantly critical, dismissive, and validating. Like those things are not going to be okay wherever you are. But these things in terms of reciprocity, there is gray in that. Like in what you might desire in your relationship versus what another relationship, what might work for another relationship is going to be custom fit for every single person involved.
I will say that if you feel as though you're giving so much to that person that you don't have enough for yourself at the end of the day, that's when you need to rethink and take stock. If you're giving so much to them, taking care of them, cleaning for them, stroking their ego, making sure they're okay, that you don't have enough to give yourself 10 to 15 minutes of self-care each day. And I think that's a minimum, 10 to 15 minutes. That's a problem because you're giving so much of yourself that you have nothing for your own, and you can't refill someone else's cup when your cup is empty. And that's actually a quote for a child. Like that's what I tell parents. Like, I understand this is exhausting and you really don't want to take time for yourself, but you can't refill your child's cup if yours is empty. It should never be like that for a relationship with someone who's supposed to be like, you're both holding each other down.
Right. So, I mean, given these different things that we've outlined, obviously not exhaustive, but, one of the things that you talked about earlier, Raquel, is just how if you find yourself in a relationship like this, like we've talked about how to sustain relationships, what makes healthy relationships, even mentioned a predictor of divorce earlier today. But when you find yourself in a relationship that is not working, there are also things that can make it hard to get out of it, right? Like there are things that, for example, people often feel guilty for wanting to leave, or they feel like they may not be able to find another person. They feel too dependent on the other person. They might not find anyone better. These are all ideas that people have when it's you recognize this is not a good situation and you want out, but maybe feel like you can't, right? Like this is comfortable, it's familiar, it's the devil rather than the next person who's completely unknown and unfamiliar. So there are all these ways in which we can get kind of stuck in relationships that actually are not healthy for us. So how do we learn to let go of relationships that are toxic?
I think one of the things is realizing why you decided to stay with the person. Like, I think you named some really good things, but it could also be, I think you mentioned like comfort, and then you also fixate on like the good times sometimes. Like it was bad, it wasn't bad all the time. Like, or dependence. Like a lot of people are dependent on one another, which can go to the financial aspect. But I think you can forgive yourself for wanting to walk away. Like, think about the fact that it's okay that you. So I think selfish is said as a bad word sometimes, but there is nothing wrong with being selfish when it's necessary, because the only person that you take everywhere is yourself. So if I physically can't stand to be around a person, or if I feel like they're taking so much of me that I have nothing to give, then you need to be selfish, because that's how you protect yourself from the rest of from that person, from the rest of the world. So selfish isn't always bad when it comes to relationships. If you can't thrive with that person around, you need to be selfish, or just like try to think about like all the negativity that person is bringing into your life. Like, you're saying it wasn't bad all the time, but when was it good? Like, to just even saying it wasn't bad all the time, like, is that what you want? You want to be with someone who it wasn't bad all the time, and this is a person that you want to like walk through life with? Like, and I'm thinking more serious relationships. Now, if there are totally different kinds of relationships, if you're just with someone because you just want to like have someone to pay for your food, or you just with someone because you just, enjoy the superficial aspect of just like, I don't know, just physical. Do that. That's all well and good for you. I can only think that gets old at some point. But if you're trying to have a serious relationship and you feel like it's toxic, like looking at the negativity, looking at other healthy relationships you have and trying to fixate on that. Spend time with people who you feel like are more positive relationships. Like if your boyfriend or your girlfriend is really draining you, try to spend some time with your more platonic friends and realize like that you can be happy, or spend more time with yourself. Because I think one big thought process is like, what really made you stay in that relationship for so long? Like, was it something that you were just, that you didn't think that you deserved a better relationship? Is it because that you felt comfort in that relationship in some aspect? Like, did you not think it was so bad until someone else brought out to you? Like, what part of you made you stay in that relationship? Like, do you not know yourself as well as you thought you did? Were you trying to grow as a person and you didn't think you could grow on your own? Like, is dependency something that has been prevalent throughout a bunch of your relationships? Like, what is it? I think a lot of processing happens when you're trying to leave a relationship, because you're really trying to figure out if you don't want to talk to this person again. And it could be a permanent decision, so it could take a lot of thought.
Yeah, I think one of the most important pieces you mentioned is that being honest with yourself about what the relationship is. For some couples, like going back to that the love bank analogy that I used earlier, right? Like if you all are working with a very, very low account balance, there's not much love deposited into the relationship, and it is stressful and tense and unsatisfying 90% of the time, it does feel really good when you get a short deposit. It's a nice reprieve, but that's also because the stress, the tenseness of it, the misunderstandings, the imbalance has become the baseline of the relationship. that's become their baseline level of functioning. So like going on a date night, even though you all haven't been connecting for a while and there's been longer terms of you all disagreeing and being unhappy with one another, that works for that brief moment. But then you'll have to know, and you'll have to be honest with yourself that there's more work to be done, and just doing a little bit isn't going to be sufficient. So I think in terms of determining like when there's time to leave a relationship, it's about knowing whether it's become abusive or not, knowing whether it is fear-based, your reactions and behaviors in the relationship, and discerning whether one or neither partner is willing to work on the relationship. If you're both really, really unhappy and want to work on it, that's fantastic, right? Because then it's no longer about what is going on in the relationship. It's about you all coming together. It's no longer about like one person being wrong or the other person being the enemy. It's about you all coming together to tackle the issues in the relationship itself. Neither of you is the enemy, but the issue itself becomes the enemy. So it's great when couples can say, let's work on this. But if neither partner is wanting to work or improve, your options become remaining in a relationship that is potentially toxic or just simply unsatisfactory, or actually looking at other relationships, or considering leaving this relationship with the possibility of starting another relationship in the future. I think looking at other relationships you have in your life that don't evoke fear or don't make you anxious or don't make you uncomfortable or feel self-critical, like whatever the case may be, if you have other relationships in your life that are more rewarding and more fulfilling, taking stock of the qualities within those relationships is important as well. And knowing that you can have a healthier relationship if you put the work in to do that, either with yourself or with your partner, is really, really important. And if it's not with your partner, then working on yourself so that you can have those future healthy relationships will be a really, really important thing to do.
Yeah, see what you're getting out of that relationship, if anything. Like, take a step back and think about, like, how would my life be different if this person was not in it? Like, are you frowning when you have this, when you think about this? Or are you really just like, I don't know. Well, if they're not really contributing anything to your life, like, what's the point? Mm-hmm. You know, if you think about your friends, you can think about the way your friends contribute to your life. Your family contributes to your life. But if your mate doesn't contribute to your life in any way, I don't really see, and that doesn't mean like contribute financially. That can just mean that they like put you in a better space. That can just mean that like you're happy when you're around them, and like during the day, like that's the one part of the day you look forward to, is being with that person. But if you don't find that, they're not really contributing anything to you. Right. So if you need to walk away, walk away. You know, think more about your relationship. You can think more in terms of like, I can find a future relationship that does this for me, or just think about the fact that I can know myself better and have a better relationship with myself and understand myself more walking away from this. And also be realistic about walking away. Not everybody can just cut somebody off cold turkey. Like, that can be very difficult. Not everyone has like the whole guillotine process that I do. And that's not even for everyone. That's for more superficial relationships. When it's someone that I genuinely care about, like, it takes way more time and energy for me to decide whether or not to walk away, because I do have a tendency to think about like the good times and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But you also think about the fact that they've been few and far between. Mm-hmm. Find something new to do, a hobby, and maybe like even so like I always feel like when I tell my mom that someone did me wrong, then they're done, because like once you tell your parents, they don't want that person in their house anymore anyway. So maybe your backup could be telling your friends, so every single time like you bring the person up, they'd be like, I thought we were done with them. Or your friends could be like, bro, I could have sworn you said she was like the worst person ever, but you do you. Like, maybe that's your backup. Maybe that's your safety net, is telling your friends what happened to you so that they can look at you crazy when you decide to be back with them. Like, some people need that.
I would say you do have to be careful with that, because if you are still contemplating, if you're just a little bit ambivalent, but you give your friends the entire negative scoop all the time, 24/7, and they only hear the negative things about your partner, then of course they're going to have a negative perception of them, want more for you because they care about you. try to steer you in a particular direction that they feel will be more beneficial for you, which may not necessarily align with where you are in discerning what you want to do about the relationship. So I would say, yeah, maybe that could be a good strategy. Once you've decided and you need some more support from family and friends, you've kind of decided that you want to leave the relationship, but you're having trouble doing it, then enlisting your friends' support, your family's support, and doing that during the difficult time can be really, really helpful. But I think you'll have to be mindful of where you are in that decision-making process before you start enlisting other people into it.
All right, guys. Well, that's the end of what's love got to do with it. So we're still doing a relationship series. Our next episode is actually going to be about friendships.
That's right.
So that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Y'all have a great week.
Take care. See you next week. Bye.